Morning guys, I'm Dave Canterbury with the Pathfinder School. What we're going to do today is we're going to do a small project to make the outside portion of an Ochi style pack frame. And to do that, we're going to use a technique called steam bending or heat bending. Steam and heat bending of wood is a very ancient skill. It's one that everyone should understand because it allows you to manipulate material from the natural environment to shapes that you want it. Not only to straighten arrows or to put reflex, deflex, and bow limbs, but also to make the structural material for boats, as well as things like this pack frame that we're going to do today. Stay with me and we'll get started. The stick has been soaking in water quite a while, and I'm going to use steam to help me bend the stick as well, but right now just trying to stretch the fibers out while they're wet, get it somewhat pliable, and I'm just using this tree as a form to give it a gentle curve. Eventually we're going to want this stick to bend a long ways because we're going to try to make a pack frame with this. So we've got to have a bent hoop here of about 6 feet in length. Steam's going to help us with that here in just a little while. It doesn't hurt anything to continue to break this over your knee a little bit at a time while you're waiting on your water to heat up to get that steam. The more we can get this thing to bend now, the better off we're going to be when we get ready to bend it in half. What we don't want is we don't want this thing breaking internally on the underside, and we don't want it delaminating either from the outside. So it's a time-consuming process, especially in the winter time, to form wood with heat or with moisture. But once you get it to where you need it and it dries out, it will stay that way. Okay, so what I've done here is I've just taken a loop of line and I've put just a slipping type loop on this side, and then I have taken the other side of that line and run it through that loop, and that's going to be basically a tensioning loop. And I'm going to take the other side of this string and I'm going to bend this down like this. Put this loop right here. Then I can use this portion here to tension it down. Now I could notch these sticks if I wanted to, but I don't think that's going to be a necessity. If I notched them out on the end, it wouldn't be a big deal, but they're wet enough right now, it's not going to make a difference. So I'm just pulling down slowly on that tensioning loop to slowly bend it. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm not applying a windlass yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a trucker's hitch style knot in this to hold it. And now I'm going to begin steaming the hooped portion of this to help it bend even more. Now as this water begins to boil down here, I've wrapped my watch coat over the top of my tripod just in an effort to trap a little bit more of that heat and steam. And I'm just lowering it down and raising it up as I can around the flames. Obviously we don't want to catch it on fire. Now I'm going to take my hoop and stick it in here as close to the steam as I can get it. Just like this. I don't want it in the fire. I want it in the steam so that it will impregnate the wood with hot water and make it bend easier. As I go, I'm continually tightening this trucker's hitch loop. I'm continuously tightening it as I go while this is in the bending process. And I just go a couple inches at a time, then I tie it off again and go back into the steam again. And I can adjust what areas bend on this thing a little bit by how I steam it and where I steam it. if my arc starts to get off kilter a little bit, which it's going to anyway naturally on you because your stick is going to go from large to small, obviously. You're not going to get a 1 diameter stick across a 6 foot length very easy. So you have to just play with that as well. Having these forks on this tripod pretty much allows me hands-free with this operation at certain times. A little hot chocolate. Now remember that as you steam this stuff, you also dry it. So you're going to have to just try to bend the areas that you're steaming. And all I'm doing now is I'm trying to get a little bit more of a gentle curve to this instead of a curve right here in the center. I'm trying to curve it over just a little bit here. And I'm going to curve it over a little bit more on the other side here as well. Drop that curve down just a little bit to give myself a little bit more of an even arc right here. You may get yourself to the point during this process where you've got to add a little bit more water to your pot. Set your project aside for a few minutes to create more steam once that water starts to boil down. Just take your time with it. You don't need to be in a hurry. Right, Rufus? Got all day, don't we, buddy? Huh? Got all day, don't we? We got all day, don't we? Oh, dog kisses. Yuck. The further your water gets down this container, the further your steam is from your piece, and the more heat you're getting in there to actually dry the wood out. So you want to keep a pretty good level of boiling water in there if you can. And just keep a close eye on that fire and keep it tended, because that's going to be the key to getting this thing to bend without breaking. We've made quite a bit of progress already. I want to show you something about this loop, because the way we're using this loop, we can actually rotate it around. Once it gets short, we can rotate it around because we use that trucker's hitch type tensioning loop. We can just slide that loop around to get more drawdown. And that's what we've done. And now we're getting to the point where we've got it within probably 6 or 7 inches of where we want to be when we're done. I've got one spot here, and sometimes you just got to really torque on that stuff a little bit once you get it heated up to get it to bend. But now I'm getting exactly what I want, and I'm about, I can bend that thing to where I need it now easy enough, and tighten this string up and let it sit and dry. You can see what the bend looks like. I'll show you a wider of that in a minute. But what I was talking about with this tightening loop is what I want to show you real fast. With this trucker's hitch type loop in here, I can adjust this around to gain some pull on this thing. And this thing doesn't need to be any closer together than it's going to be. This thing doesn't need to be any closer together here really than the small on my back. But once I get that thing pretty leveled out, which it is now, I'm going to tie it off one time, and I'm probably going to put a safety half hitch in this one to make sure it doesn't come undone. And then I'm going to heat it up one more time real quick, just to make sure everything stays where I want it to stay in. And then I want to look at where my frame's at now. And now it's a little bit closer than I need it, but that's okay. There's nothing broken except a little bit of bark peeling off, which that's okay too, because I'm going to end up peeling the bark completely off of this when I'm done. But I want to let it dry with the bark on it. So now I have the beginnings of my pack frame here, and it's just the right width, right there in between my shoulders. If I go backwards like this, I'm good to go. And that's the way I want it, just like that. So if I chicken wing back, it's not going to get in my way. That's just about perfect. So now I've just turned this hoop upside down, these forks with the bend down, just in the fire where it's uncomfortable for me to put my hand, not close enough that it's going to burn the wood. And I can adjust that just by moving the tripod a little bit back and forth. And that will solidify that forming of the wood and keep it in that shape once it dries out. Okay, so one thing that we need to understand material-wise real quick that I may not have covered really well in this video is that we're using a piece of about 3/4 inch diameter redbud. And redbud's a pretty flexible tree in the summertime, although you probably wouldn't get away with bending something this diameter double over like this, even in the summertime. But in the wintertime, the ability to be able to heat bend or steam bend wood like this becomes even more critical because there's not as much sap flowing through the wood and it's more brittle to begin with. So I just wanted to cover the materials that we're using and the type of wood that I'm using today, because redbud's a very prolific bush type tree all over the eastern woodlands, and it's very good for things like this. Well, folks, I appreciate you joining me out here today for this video on how to steam bend wood. I think this is a very traditional and important primitive skill that we should understand to help us take advantage of the resources available to us to make the things that we may need. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.